was fortunate enough, almost exactly 2 years ago, Angela called me and the producers, Mira and Trivy, and or they sent me an email with the Watergate footage and another key footage that's actually not in this 1 hour version. There is a theatrical version that's an hour and a half long. And it's about Reagan was trying to get this guy Bork on the Supreme Court, and Barbara was very much against it and was talking, gave a speech about it. And just watching those clips of her, I was absolutely mesmerized, and also didn't know why I didn't know about her. And I watched those and I felt like I don't even need to cut this at all, because Barbara does that herself. She is so careful about her delivery, and she's so present in the moment. And then, when me and Angela talked more about possibly collaborating, we agreed that, we want to just really hear everything through Barbara's voice.
And I think you all know, but just in case, this will be broadcast on PBS.
That's correct. On Monday.
This Monday.
Yes, February 23rd.
So tell your friends who cannot be tonight that they will have an opportunity to see it on PBS.
And I could add also, it has distribution through PBS, so it will be on Amazon and pretty much everywhere. So you can definitely see it.
I want to turn now to my good friend, and I had a decent career, I guess, but one disappointment was that I never got an opportunity to work with the brilliant Lena Ellis, who recently retired from NBC. Yes. Now, I want you to react to the film, but I want you to include in that your first introduction period when you became aware of Barbara Jordan.
Number one, this is amazing. I don't have a microphone, but I might not need one. I am absolutely thrilled. In fact, my Aunt Minnie, one time I was receiving an award and I said, I'm tickled pink. She said, baby, you can't be. But she said, you can't be tickled black. And I am tickled black to be sitting next to you, and so grateful for what you have done. I was talking to one of my doctors who was in the 30 years old, and I said, I'm going to be on this panel talking about a film about Barbara Jordan. She said, who is Barbara Jordan? And I said, I'm not tickled black anymore. 1972 was a pivotal year in my life. I was a student at Simmons University in Boston. Barbara Jordan, before then, had attended Boston University for law school. But in 1972, there was a civil rights movement going on, and I entered Simmons College behind some extraordinary young black women who were, I think there were only 28 in the class of some 2,500 students at Simmons. And they came up with a list of 10 demands. And one of them was that there had to be some Black studies courses in this university, that there had to be some Black teachers in this university, there had to be some more Black students in this university. And when I came into the class in 1972, I felt a tremendous responsibility to follow through with what they had started. And Barbara Jordan was coming from the deep South, and I was raised in the deep north of Boston. And I felt empowered by Barbara Jordan and by her voice and by her commitment and by her determination to go forward and to represent people. I became a member of the Black Student Organization, one of the leaders of the organization, who also staged a sit-in the president's office demanding that there be more Black students and Black professors. And in 1972, Simmons College instituted the first African-American Black Studies program as a result of student activism on the campus at Simmons College. That's how I got introduced to Barbara Jordan, because she inspired me.
Did you meet her in person?
Never.
Oh,
No.
I'm sorry. Yeah. But none of us had to meet her in person. We just had to hear her. My Lord, talking about the voice of God for sure. You know, in your notes, and by the way, I will confess that I'm doing something. These are not candid and unrehearsed questions that I'm asking. My panelists have given to me what I should ask them, so I'm carrying forth with that. You have indicated that you were wondering whether today's complex information ecosystem would work for Barbara Jordan. First, explain to me what you mean by that complex information ecosystem and why you think it will or will not work for her.
One of the beautiful things of this film is that you point out that in the 1970s, all black people were all watching the same thing because all Americans were watching the same thing. There were only 3 networks, CBS, ABC, and NBC. That was it. There was no TikTok, there was no X, there was no Twitter, none of that. So we're all around the same information system. Now, you can get your information from a variety of different places, and most of it, I should tell you, and I can't wait to hear what the League of Women Voters are going to say about this, because right now, most people get their information from a digital service. In fact, 18 to 29-year-old voters, 93% of them get their information from digital devices. So if you're not there, you're not reaching that group of people. So I don't know, Barbara Jordan thought that, well, I'm going to go on Joe Rogan, or I'm going to go on and, what is his name? Charlemagne, the God. I don't know. Would she have gone there?
Yeah.
I think she might have. Because her thing was about reaching people. Her thing was about communicating. Her thing was about representing people. If that's where they were, Barbara Jordan might have a good voice there.
Good point, good point. Well, let's turn to you, please, Ms. Jennifer Howard. As we look forward to the upcoming U.S. congressional elections with hope or anxiety, depending on your political needs, an organization that is encouraging participation by all Americans is the League of Women Voters around the nation. And we are pleased to reintroduce Ms. Howard, who is the president of the League of Women Voters in New Jersey. Would you give us your reflections on the film that you've just seen and then pick up on what my colleague Ms. Ellis was saying?
First of all, thank you for your great editing. I don't mind aging myself, so I was 9 when the Watergate hearings came on, and maybe because it was the summertime, we got to watch it all day long because we weren't really allowed to watch a lot of TV. So we remembered Barbara Jordan, and it did bring tears to my eyes. It brought tears just hearing her voice, her mannerism, her dialect, and being very precise. Because a debate person is trying to get their message across as a teacher, as she put on her gravestone. All right? So it really did bring back those days in the household, listening to the hearings and listening to what Congresswoman Jordan was talking about. I'm going to piggyback on what she said. We are now going to be not old-fashioned, but new-fashioned watchdogs for democracy. And to be a new-fashioned watchdog for democracy means that you have to be where the people are. And where the people are, unfortunately or fortunately, it doesn't matter. It could be in print journalism. It could be in what we considered standard journalism on the media. It could be in social media. I have, and I'll say this now, I have a 33-year-old child, and he gets a lot of his information digitally, but he's aware of what's happening. He's aware of what's happening right now in Iran. He's aware of what's happening in the United States. So we cannot necessarily say that where they're getting their information is the wrong place. We just have to make sure there's not a whole lot of mis and disinformation out there. And what the League is trying to do, we have a pamphlet out front in English and Spanish, is how to combat mis and disinformation, especially in the media.
You also wanted to discuss the role and presence of women in elected politics in New Jersey.
Yeah, I did, and it's interesting because we had some thoughts before this film, and I was focusing on being a woman of color. But as Congresswoman Jordan said, she doesn't always think of herself as a woman necessarily fighting as women's rights or fighting for Black rights. But what we do know is that it's still not the best in the United States and in New Jersey. The Center for American Women in Politics in New Jersey said there's only 29.5% of women in elected office in New Jersey. A shout out, if she's still here, because I can't see the audience. Yes, she is. To former Senator Weinberg, and also Tina Blair also. What the League does is, and through our mission nationally is empowering voters, defending democracy. And by empowering voters and defending democracy, it's also making sure that voters understand that we the people have the power. And by we the people having the power, we have to make sure that you know what your power is rooted in. Last year, I would have said it was the Constitution, knock on wood. It's still the Constitution. And so by understanding that, we're hoping that we can get more people, and especially more women in New Jersey, involved in politics. I saw some young people here earlier. They may have left, but we also want to make sure that young people know that in New York, New Jersey, we just allowed students 17 to run for office for school boards. Okay? And the League is, in certain parts of the country and in New Jersey also, is seeing how we can challenge that whole dogma that says only 18-year-olds can run for elected office. We need to get the power into the people that it affects more.
And this is at a time when we see a counter movement in so many places to suppress and repress the ability to register and to vote. Anyway, you already know. We'll get to that a little bit later. But just skipping around here, you mentioned something about how you obtained the interviews that were part of the documentary, and you mentioned in particular our boss, Dan Merrill.
Oh, yes. So this is again an anecdote from Angela. She's a professor and she teaches film, and she tells her students always that if you want an interview and you have no access, just tell everyone. So she wanted to talk to Dan Rather because she knew that they had Barbara and Dan Rather had grown up at the same time in Houston, and that they had this professional connection and friendship, but she had no access to him, and she would just tell everyone, and she happened to mention it to her fiscal sponsor, who was like, "Oh, you want to interview Dan Rather?" So then a while later, he heard about it, and he came on board and gave this fantastic interview, and that opened a lot of doors for other interviews. And
like the former state's president of the state senate, who the one who said they became like brother and sister.
That's Max. He was actually serving on the Senate. Oh yeah, his interview. He would have been on board regardless. Yes. But,
You know, I have to ask. I noticed that there was no reference in the film to what I would have imagined would have been difficulties of adjustment in her early days in the state senate. And the anecdote that you chose to tell was going on the hunting trip and drinking with the good old boys. But were there some other aspects of that interaction early on that maybe were not in it?
that were more difficulties
Yeah.
in the early days. Just her getting elected was really a huge challenge. She had to do it 3 times, and the cards were completely stacked against her. But she had some Texas Democrats on her side, and then there was this redistricting from the Burns. The Speaker of the House. So when they were able to draw the lines to read this district, then she was able to get in. And she had already, it's the manner of which she came in and the training she had given herself. She was so tough on herself, growing up, always getting the best grades, her father, and also the license from her grandfather to kind of trot her on floors and just go and do what she felt she needed to do. And then, of course, learning her debate skills at CSU, that she came in with strength. So.
Rahima, you had mentioned that young people, well, tell me about your point of young people being able to analyze arguments that for which you have.
One of the things that I think is so critical as watching this, and I keep wanting to thank you again for being so much involved with this film, and to thank the Barrymore Center here for showing this film. I hope this film is seen by every young person in America, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Muslim. Everybody should see this film. And there's going to be a big question, I think, for a lot of young people. And you mentioned it in that on the back of her tombstone there was one word, and it was teacher. And I think that there's something that's really imperative. I spent a lot of my time covering education for NBC. And one of the things that I find so challenging for us as we try to teach people about civic responsibility and why it's important to vote, and how do you counter the notion that people say the vote doesn't matter. Just even reading about politics, whether you read it on social media or on your phone, or it's digital, the scores that came out last year about, it's called the Nation's Report Card, and essentially is a snapshot of how our students are doing from K through 12. Actually, it's the fourth grade that they, 4th, 8th, and 12th grade they do these tests. And last year, on the reading test, 1/3 of 12th graders scored below basic level reading. Only 35% of 12th graders were proficient in reading. Only 35%. So do the reverse of that. And that means 65% were less than proficient in basic or basic in terms of the reading skills. 65% of our 12th graders, they're going into voting age. When the analysis was done on these statistics, it said, essentially, they are not capable of understanding a compound sentence and not able of understanding what the meaning is in a simple paragraph. How in the world are they going to understand the complexities of what's happening in America? This film about Barbara Jordan and what she was going through in America in the 1970s and sooner is a film of America today. This is America's story right now. And how our children, and not children, but yes, our children, but young people, going to grasp this? I think that Barbara Jordan would be on the streets, in the schools, in the boys' clubs and girls' clubs in America, and she would be teaching. And that would be politicking in America. And I think that if people are concerned about making change in America, there needs to be a change about making an effort about changing what's happening in America's schools. You can't have 65% of your 12th graders going out into the working world and expecting them to be proficient and capable and responsible American citizens if they can't read. That means we're leaving them out. And she would be very upset with us about it. And her daddy would be too.
Tell me, Rahima, have many school systems stopped teaching civics?
Yes and no.
Oh.
It is taught, but it may be a page. I went to schools in the South, and there's one paragraph about 9/11.
One paragraph.
One paragraph about 9/11. The teacher explained it saying that the history of 9/11 is still evolving. Maybe that's true. But there have been books written about 9/11 that could have been included and can be included in our history books. As I said to you earlier, there are a lot of people who don't even know the name of Barbara Jordan. And I think that we can't wait for, everything just can't be a lived experience. I didn't live when Jesus walked on the land, but I know about him. And the reason I know about him is because I was taught about him. And there are other things that we can know if we take the time to teach it in our schools. So yes and no. Civics are taught in some places, and other places they're taught with great vigor, but not everywhere. As is the case, not all of our kids in schools are inefficient in terms of their reading. We have pockets of excellent education here in America. New Jersey has some of the best schools in the country, but you also have some pockets of some of the worst schools in America. And if it's to be changed, it has to be, somebody's got to be teaching, somebody's got to get engaged, somebody's got to be Barbara Jordan and telling that story and saying we've got to educate our kids so that they know that there is a reason for them to be involved in politics. It will make a difference in their lives, as Barbara Jordan made a difference in people's lives because she was engaged in politics.
If I can add something here. So a couple of things. I'm often asked or challenged about why does my vote count, as you said earlier. And I remind people that there are races that are not always the President of the United States. There are local and municipal races and school board races. There are city council races. There are races in this state which are decided by 2, 3, 4 votes. So your vote does count. And if you're thinking about what happens when you're driving a road and you're worried about potholes or you're worried about your school system, that's where your vote is going to be impacted. Another thing is the state of New Jersey does have a civics education requirement in the curriculum. It has room to grow. The League of Women Voters started a project in 2019, called Energizing Young Voters, 16 to 25. We have developed a civics education that we go out to the schools and we use that as a template for them to teach civics education. And I'm proud to say in New Jersey that that model of energizing young voters is now being used in a lot of other leagues around the country. So we are developing the tools for the teachers. Once again, I'm going back to the teachers because we have to get young people, not just young people, because sometimes you're in a point in life where you're not ready to learn. You know, some of us are older learners, so I don't want to just say young people, but you have to be in a point in your life where you're ready to learn, and we're there to help you to understand a little bit about civics education. But I always want to go back to your vote counts. Your vote absolutely counts.
Earlier today, I was looking at a YouTube report by a former colleague at CBS named Charlie Dacta, and he was talking about the gathering of a naval armada near Iran, and the report had more to do with when it's going to happen, whether it's going to happen, how many ships, how many planes, but there was no reference at all to, well, what is the authority behind this? There's this thing called the Constitution that says that Congress is supposed to declare war. And I'm saying if the reporters don't repeat this inside the context of their stories, a lot of Americans will just assume that it is the president who can decide if he's going to, blow people out of the water. Which has been done. I'm sorry, you're not supposed to do it. But those of you who know me from past TIFF events know that I just can't help myself. But when you hear Barbara Jordan talk about fealty to the Constitution, we need Americans who understand that that is the underpinning of everything. And if the Constitution doesn't work, where are we? Okay, so much for Randall's editorial comments here. Let us open the floor.
Barbara Ostrad, Vice President of the Teenage League of Women Voters. I'm so grateful that we have that point of view on this panel. I will add to what Ms. Howard said about civic education, that for probably 24 years, the Harvard University created the Harvard Civics Education Project free of charge to train teachers, high school teachers, as to how to educate their children in civics education and bring it back into their districts. And every year, our leagues are invited to nominate 2 or 3 teachers to participate in this training. So we've been at this quite a while, and we have also obviously been cheerleaders of the fact that New Jersey has a requirement that is not only in the high schools, but is in 7th and 8th grade. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
I also would like to have maybe Ms. Howard speak about the league's nonpartisan mission and the difference between our positions on issues and that non-candidates.
Sure. Just get this here because I want to make sure I keep this.
So as Barbara says, the League is a nonpartisan organization, but we're still a political organization. By nonpartisan means that we do not support a candidate, nor do we oppose a candidate. And that's been our motto and message since 1920. When the League started in 1920, the first League was in Newark, and we had political gains of advocating for world peace, rights of women, women in the workforce, and conditions of women and children. So we had political advocacy since the 1920s. What I tell people is I never use the D or the R word, because if you think about it, in the 1920s, there was one party that people may not now think as being pro-women, but it was a different party, and as Barbara Jordan, that's how she ended the speech at the convention, right? But what we do want to know is that we're there to make sure, at least here in New Jersey, that your representatives understand that your voice is important. And so your voice is important not just for voting rights. The League also looks at environmental issues, education. I'm going to say this now because we did the press release today. We are an amicus, I never know how to say that. Read for the Latina Action Network, the discrimination and segregation in New Jersey schools. That case has been out since 2018, and League has joined in because we know that there are segregation in the schools, in the New Jersey school system, and by that, it is inherently against our Constitution of a fair and efficient education. So we are part of that. So we have education, natural resources, women and children's issues, governance issues. So we're more than just the democracy space, and I think that's what Barbara was trying to get me to say.
I saw a hand over your left, to my left rather, in the corner there. You got a question? No? Yes? Change mine? Okay. I'm just kidding. Yes, please. Give us your name, please.
Hi, Thomasina Schwartz from League of Women Voters North Valley. I think for sure Barbara Jordan would be on TikTok, but you know that. I mean, she was such a cool, progressive type person, although maybe she would not have been considered progressive at the time. I just want to say, I was watching her when I was 14 years old at the convention, and it has really stuck with me my whole life. And also Shirley Chisholm. I grew up in Queens. I mean, Shirley Chisholm's from Brooklyn. So, two really strong Black women were a large part of the inspiration that I felt as a young woman at the time. While watching the film, all I kept thinking about was she's speaking about today. And which I think makes us all realize that there are cycles and we can, get through the hard times. If Barbara Jordan can do it, we can certainly do it too. The other thing I want to say is, as president of the league, I think one of the most important things we do is educate. I think education is really at the forefront of everything the league does. And I'm so proud to be a league member. And I was just wondering, is Barbara Jordan a league member?
No, but she did speak at our 75th anniversary of the League of Women Voters of the United States. And the archive of her speech is in the University of Texas in Austin system. So you can pull up her speech there. I just found that out today.
Oh, and one more thing, Jasmine Crockett, yeah, she's obviously very young. She never got to meet Barbara Jordan. Did she speak more about what was her personal connection with Barbara Jordan? Was there one?
I don't believe there was, but she's a huge admirer and she was influenced by Barbara, obviously, yeah. So,
And she's a Texan.
yes, that's correct, yes. But just to the point of the cyclical nature, we wanted to, that was one of the important themes for the film, so that kind of let us guide the structure and the content of the film was that, when we're watching these moments that Barbara is a part of, they resonate so much with what's going on now, even though maybe Watergate doesn't seem as serious as what's going on right now, which is ironic. But
I noticed out of the corner of my eye that my friend, Ms. Oaks was making some notes. So would you care to share, or was that your personal?
I was thinking about segregation. New York City has 1 million public school students. Pardon me? Oh. New York has 1 million public school students and 50 million public school students across the country. But when you talk about segregated schools, it's not, the largest number of segregated schools are not in the Deep South. They're actually in New York State. And it's in part because of the large number of students we have in New York. It's 1 million. We have a lot of Hispanic students, we have a lot of Asian students, we have a lot of Muslim students. They speak 114 different languages are spoken in New York City public schools. And in terms of reaching people, the League of Women Voters and this film reaching people, I just am so jazzed about the fact that this has an opportunity to be seen by people all across this country who may feel marginalized for one reason or another, and that this film can change the perspective of how they see themselves and also how they see this country. I've had a number of students say to me from time to time, why didn't your generation fix this? Why are you leaving us this mess? And I think one of the things that's important that this film does, it will give people the opportunity to understand that each generation has this crisis. If you look back in history, and again, in terms of understanding civics and understanding American history and the history of this planet, every generation will be challenged. And it's a question of who will those leaders, where will they come from, how will they be inspired, how will they be educated, will they have the tools that they need in order to move themselves into the next iteration that they want to be in. I grew up in Boston, and voting is so much a part of the core of how I think about moving forward. It was something that my family was insistent on. And when I cover stories as a reporter in Boston, one of the things that used to make me furious, just as a person, to say nothing as a correspondent, is that the community that I lived in was called Roxbury. And Roxbury was made of 150,000 people. And a representative from Roxbury was voted into the city council by only 1,300 votes. He got into the city council, he had absolutely zero power. Because he was in a community of other legislators who were voted in by thousands of votes. And they looked at him and said, we don't have to pay attention to you because nobody voted for you. People voted for him, but few people voted. So the percentage of the margins of his success were so minimal. He was marginalized by the fact that he didn't walk in there with the power of the people. And so when I'm watching this about Barbara Jordan and the questions of whether she's arrogant and whether she should be speaking and the way that she does and advocating the way that she does, I represent the people. It made me make a note about segregation. I'm making notes about who is able to read, and I'm making notes about the level of graduation that we have in this country, and what it means. And I am still sanguine about America because of those like this, because people are putting this information out, and because Barbara Jordan came up in Congress at a time when there were signs when there's a black fountain and there's a white fountain. And when she said, if she can do it, it can be done.
And also one of the things of the cyclical nature, you touched about it a little bit in the film when you said that Barbara Jordan wasn't just focused on Texas but international, because she was a proponent of immigrant rights. Wow, look where we are now, right? Look where we are now. I mean, I think Barbara would be on the stage, I hope, talking about, what we're doing to destroy the rights of people in this country who, just because they weren't necessarily born in a hospital or a naval base or something like that in the United States, have to be taken away. Their rights as through the Constitution, because the Constitution says that you still have the right to a trial by jury and everything like that. And I think she would be advocating for us here in New Jersey to pass our Immigrant Trust Act and continue to do that and protect our immigrants. And I'm hoping cyclically that we'll get to a point that we can respect Congresswoman Jordan and her rights for immigrants.
Yes, please.
Good evening, I'm Jacqueline Weisner, and I was deeply touched, and I think it's amazing that you can have a film about a political figure and make people come to tears. So that speaks to the quality of what you offer. But I know the history of Adam Clayton Powell, for instance, and he talks about how difficult his time was in Congress. And the way you presented the film really gave you a good feeling about all that she went through. But I'm sure, based on what we see today, she must have suffered some very vile moments. And I was wondering if you have any stories about that, or if it's in the longer film that you present.
Repeat the question.
The question was whether Barbara Jordan, she referenced Adam Clayton Powell Jr. and his early years in Congress and the difficulties that he faced as he made his way into prominence, and wondered whether there had been any particularly vile moments for Barbara Jordan as she entered state and national elected office.
The thing about Barbara was that she was very respected. She commanded respect. And she, of course, the thing about it was like she was never going to get that far, as far as she wanted with the Attorney General position in the Carter administration. And that's where she really saw that there's a limit to where she's allowed to go. But in terms of personal, the thing about Barbara is also that she was very private. So the footage that we have doesn't really speak about her personal experiences that much. She has written, she wrote a book about her experiences. So when she went to law school, she felt completely outside, and of course, just the segregation that she grew up with. There were some vile experiences there, but in terms of her political career, yes, I can't really recall that she had this, except, you know, when she was running for positions that she couldn't get elected to.
Thank you. Rahima, you have inspired me to share something that I usually don't talk about. I'm from Mississippi. When I was born, there were some black people who were registered voters, but not many. And if anybody knows anything about the civil rights movement, which I don't know if that is being taught in many school systems anymore, as a matter of fact, a lot of posts about it being banned. People gave their lives for the right to vote. Now, why am I focusing on that? Because when my great-grandmother was born in 1878, it was shortly after the first two black United States senators were in Washington representing the state of Mississippi. Blanche K. Bruce and Hiram Revels. Don't be shocked. The first African-American United States senators were from Mississippi during the years of Reconstruction. Historians have tried to paint that period as a time of scalawags and carpetbaggers who messed up everything. But in fact, the truth is the opposite. They started public schools. They did a whole lot of good stuff that helped all people, not just black people, until the Redeemers, the former Confederate soldiers, decided to reclaim their place and put black people in what they thought was their place with the help of the Ku Klux Klan and similar organizations. Flash forward. I'm talking to State Senator, to this day, Mississippi has a higher percentage of black residents than any other state in the nation. A higher percentage of black, which therefore means a higher percentage of potential black voters. So I see these lawsuits that are trying to create districts that will allow more than one black person to elect to Congress, one man, one vote rule that assisted Barbara Jordan be elected. Those kinds of districts will not be challenged in many states. Mississippi only has one black congressman, Benny Thompson, who chaired the January 6th commission. And I think that he did a fabulous job. But anyway, when Republican Senator Thad Cochran decided to resign from office, Thad was one of what we would call, in the parlance of the day, good white folks. He resigned so that it would set up a possibility of Mike Espy, who was the first black congressman in the 20th century, to get a seat. Problem was it would require a whole lot of black people to vote. And a whole lot of black people did not vote. Set on their hands for whatever reason. I don't understand it, but it didn't happen. So Mike was elected, and the state of Mississippi has a senator named Cynthia Hyde-Smith, and you all can read about her. I'm not going to talk about it tonight. But I was in Yazoo City 2 weeks ago speaking to State Senator Joseph Thomas, and I was asking him about, what happened? And he said, Randall, what happened then and what's happening now is that we have about 30 to 40% of registered black voters, black people who could be registered to vote going to the vote. 30 to 40%. Therefore, no representation. Your point about the representative from Roxbury. So, what's that all saying? I'm not going to save us, for us, but us. And this is including white folks, brown folks, yellow folks, and goodwill. We all got to get together if we're going to straighten this thing out.
My name is Celine Lewis Wong, and I can't help but think that all of my heroes have died young. I think it was a sense of emotion when we found out that she died at 59 years old, and I think we all kind of sighed and said, oh my gosh, she was such a young woman when she died. Yet those women have done things that were powerful and changing in this country that our children should have learned about in school. I don't think I learned about much of that in school, but my mother was an educator, and so she made me read about Barbara Jordan and Fannie Hamer and Shirley Chisholm. But as for the children right now, we are responsible for those history lessons. We can't allow the schools to tell us what our history is. We have to demand that our school districts teach this history. We have to demand that our libraries have books that represent who we are, who Barbara Jordan was. So I very much enjoyed the film. I'm saddened that a lot of our Black women heroes have died so young. That really did sadden me. In 1996, I graduated TIFF High School. And I remember that it was an Ebony magazine cover that I think I had one of the name was Mr. March. He was our African American Studies teacher. And I believe he had yes, Mr. March. And I believe that he taught a lot about a lot of women and politicians back that we used to call back in the day. We need teachers like that.
Yes, thank you.
The answer comes from the people in this room. You'll make the determination as to who is channeling Barbara Jordan. I don't know that it's for me or Randall to make that decision. Because you're the people who will vote. You're the people who are going to share stories about Barbara and how powerful she was and able, the whole notion that she said that my faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total. If you have that same faith, then you make a decision who will carry that voice. And this film is, again, I cannot say enough how grateful I am that in Black History Month in February, that you're bringing this film for all of us to see and to appreciate, and hopefully to learn and be inspired by what you presented for us, for those of us who have lived in real time and were inspired to do something, to be motivated and activated by her. And those who will take a look at history and realize that there's an opportunity that they can be powerful.
Yeah, Barbara carried with her always the Constitution and a picture of her grandfather. And what she was teaching to her students was to have a core set of values that's not going to change. And that's what she lived by. And there are, so that's why when the 2024 election was coming around and I was working on this film, it was such a blessing to be working on this film then, because you had that calm voice from Barbara with the unwavering principles, and she could face anyone and win anyone in an argument. So you just feel like people have, and she believed in people, that everybody has this power. She said you have to have the discipline, but everybody has this power in themselves.
And to end with another quote from Barbara: when people are eroding the foundation of the Constitution, don't be silent.
Yes.
Thank you.